It's a very familiar story. Story that all of us learned in Sunday school. And for those who did not go to Sunday school, the story pretty much explains what went on. You see, some of you know that Abraham, Father Abraham, our children would call it, received a call from God in Genesis chapter 12, right? Right? You with me on that one? On Genesis chapter 12, Abraham and Sarah received a call from God. And that call was, pack your things and move. Right? Genesis 12. Pack your stuff. Your animals, your donkeys and camels and horses. And I almost said pig, but they didn't. I don't think he was raising pigs. But I'm sure he had some chickens and doves and whatnot. And God said, hey, it's time to pack up. Time to move on. God didn't tell him where he was going, right? God only said, I'm going to show you. In due time, I will show you where you will be settled. Of course, today, in the American culture and context, that kind of suspense, you are going to move to a place that you don't know yet. What do you mean? Right? We don't want to be hanging in suspense. We like to know now. Tell me now. But God only said to Abraham, I'll show you. By that, I think God was telling Abraham and Sarah, trust me, I know. I know where I'm taking you. Trust me. I have a place in mind. How about that? Trust me. And then, what you can also sense from this sentence is that what Jesus told his disciples, I am just going ahead of you. Before you get there, I will be there already, preparing and waiting for you. I am going ahead of you. So if you read those couple of sentences, you will sense that God is not just saying, go, and he's not washing his hands. But he's saying, go, I'm going with you. Trust me, I will be there. But that's a good thing to know, isn't it? And then, but what I learned in verse 4, Abraham is 75-year-old. He's 75 at this point. And I know a lot of you are 75 and up here. And to make that transition at that age, that's a difficult task, isn't it? God is almost telling him to do something very impossible. What else do I see there? And then when Abraham was 99, God promised to Abraham that I'm going to bless you exceedingly numerous. That means God is saying to Abraham, you're going to have children, and your children will have children. That means God is saying you're going to be a father, a grandfather, a great-grandfather, and your offspring will fill the earth. Right? That is what God promised. But in Genesis 17, verse 17, his wife Sarah is 90. He's 90. I don't know if there's any 90 or 90. Is there 90 here? Oh, there's two 90-year-olds here. Now, imagine this text. You know, God comes and appears before them, and then the angel of God is telling Abraham, your wife will have a son. And Sarah is out there, and he hears this angel of God telling her husband that your wife will have a child. Sarah, what did Sarah do? Do anybody know? She laughed. Why? Because that was very unbelievable. Right? Excuse me. The laughing was not good for me. Sarah just could not believe what she was hearing. And so, in disbelief, she laughed. And then, of course, in Genesis chapter 21, verse 5, Abraham was 100 when his first son Isaac was born. He should be a great grandpa, but he's becoming just a father. Right? So which means that Abraham and his wife Sarah waited over 20 years since they first received the promise of God. Right? That you will be mommy and daddy in your old age. That prophecy, that promise came when he was a little younger, and now he's 100, so they waited over 20 years to realize that dream. Now, in Genesis 22, the text we just read, God is demanding Abraham to sacrifice his son. Think about that. A son that was promised long time ago, a son that is so beloved, and God is asking this very beloved to be sacrificed. Think about that. Is he confused? Is Abraham confused? Is Abraham mad? Is Abraham and Sarah arguing with God? What are you doing to us? Is any of those happening in this particular text? Well, the text really doesn't say if Abraham and God was having some, argument time. But what we see in the text is that Abraham agreed to obey what God was demanding. You gave, and now you are asking me, I will do it. But what is important is in the text that we read starts with the word that God was testing Abraham. Now testing is different than temptation, right? Testing is like, Hannah and AJ graduated from high school. They had to pass certain tests, right? Test is to see if you got it, if you understood. And once they said yes, they got promoted, right? But in temptation is almost like bringing you to the edge and then trying to push you down, right? Temptation is so different. And so here, God is really testing Abraham, not tempting Abraham. So Abraham is packing. He's conversing with his son Isaac about going up to Moriah in verse 5. In verse 6, now they're traveling together. Everything seems normal. In verse 7, Isaac asked Father Abraham, we have wood, but where is the lamb to be sacrificed? Wow. Good question. Only a child can ask such an innocent question and yet very ruthless. Because in Abraham's heart, he knows what God is demanding. In trying to keep the secret on the way to Mount Moriah, think about what is happening in Abraham. Just the stress, emotional factor. I'm sure it was very difficult for Abraham. But in verse 8, Abraham was very, he was very hopeful. He said, God will provide. That is faith-filled answer, isn't it? He was very hopeful that God, through his miraculous intervention, saved him and Isaac. But then the anxiety grows when he's building an altar. Nothing is happening. God is not coming through. When he put on those wood on the altar, God is still not intervening. When he's tying his son, think about the discussion that is going on between a son and a father. Maybe Isaac is saying, Daddy, what are you doing? This is a mistake. This is a mistake. What are you doing? But we don't read those in the text. And so Abraham tied his son and laid him on the altar, and still God is not coming through. Think about that anxiety. And then Abraham pulls out his knife to finally sacrifice his son. Almost sounds cruelty in this particular text. That God is demanding something very cruel, asking Father to sacrifice his son. And then suddenly, that moment, in that fraction of a second maybe, voice of God intervenes. Abraham, Abraham, don't touch your son. Think about that. That will give me a heart attack. That will make me throw up. To live in that anxiety and tension, and to finally have God intervene. And then what happened? God says, hey, there's a ram, big horns, caught in the thicket. And Abraham and Isaac sacrificed the ram to the glory of God. There is a lesson here. And God, I think, put this story for us, for all of us,